goods, and then the 4 different types of goods. So in the first section, we'll look at externalities and economic efficiency. So far, we've talked about how in market economies, competition leads to an efficient outcome. It leads to this equilibrium that leaves producers and consumers as well off as possible. We'll see with the case of externalities where this isn't the case. Then we'll look at private solutions to externalities and go through the Coase theorem, how people can reach ways to reduce externalities and make themselves, again, better off. Next section, we'll look at government policies to deal with externalities and how government policymakers can move us towards that efficient outcome. And then finally, we'll look at the 4 categories of goods. So before we get started with environmental policy and externalities, let's think, what is the best level of pollution? Is there a clear way to know what the optimal level of pollution is for a society? So no pollution may be one of your answers, one of your thoughts. Like, okay, like pollution is bad, so obviously let's get rid of all of it. It'd be great for the environment, having no pollution, but it's not going to be good for people. Pretty much everything we do, all the modern conveniences we have, all the products that make their life easier, end up in some way resulting in pollution. But obviously, unrestrained pollution isn't optimal either. We don't want to live in a world where there's constant smog, even in a place like this. It's like far away from a big city. So there's somewhere in the middle between no pollution and unrestrained pollution. That's the optimal level for society. We're able to enjoy products that meet our needs. We're able to have stuff that we absolutely need, so like life-saving, like medical care and stuff. Something that's going to cause some pollution. So we have to decide how much pollution to allow. What's the best level of pollution? And this comes back into the idea of marginal analysis. So we'll look at what is the marginal benefit of getting rid of this little bit of pollution, and what's the cost of doing so. And if the cost exceeds the benefit, then we should do that. It would be better for society. Now, pollution is an example of an externality. No one sets out to create pollution. It's not a goal. Firms don't specialize in creating pollution as their product. Pollution is an unintended byproduct. So it's a side effect of doing something in production. So if pollution only affected the person who created it, so only that firm was forced to bear the cost, they had to suffer from the pollution, then pollution wouldn't be a problem. Because then people would create it only until its cost equaled its marginal benefit. Well, like I said, pollution is an example of an externality. So an externality is when there's a cost or a benefit that affects someone who's not directly involved. That's just 2 for this one. But still got 1 more. And someone else gets the points. I don't know. Yeah, like I was saying, externality, a cost or a benefit that affects someone who's not directly involved in production or consumption of a good or service. So all these third parties that aren't part of the transaction, when they're affected, it's an externality. So think of it like a side effect. It's not the main thing that's going on with this transaction. It's affecting something else. So the market is effective in encouraging the optimal outcome of products, makes society better off, both consumers and producers, normally. But when there's externalities present, so when there's costs and benefits that aren't being captured by the people involved in the actual transaction, we end up with problems. We're not taking into account all those costs and benefits, so then we're not going to be at this optimal level of production and consumption. Okay, so yeah, like I said, up until now, we've assumed that supply and demand curves capture all of the cost and all the benefit from a product. But often that's not going to be the case when these externalities are present. Sometimes externalities are small, and it's not too big of a deal. Sometimes they're quite large. So So can you guys think of some other examples of externalities besides pollution? Pollution is probably the easiest one to think of. All right, so besides pollution, think of anyone drive past Valewood Farms, like on the way going to the truck stop, when for breakfast after Sunday morning, soak up that hangover. You get that smell coming off of Valewood Farms from all the cows they have there. That's an externality, the production of, what do they make with the cow? I guess milk. You end up with smell that's affecting people that live around there. So that's an example of an externality. Others are cigarette smoke. Those people smoking cigarettes around you. If you're not smoking, you're not involved in that transaction, you're still getting the cost of, your clothes starting to smell like it, things like that. Construction noise. You ever have, or your neighbor mowing the lawn waking you up at 7 a.m. or their roofer's going to wake you up at 7 a.m. that you're trying to sleep in. Another example of externality. What's that?
Light pollution.
Yeah, light pollution. Who are the causes for Williamsport? The Dunkin' Donuts on the Golden Strip.
Terrible.
The traffic jam it causes every time. It's like a fairly busy road.
I told my father.
Really?
Yeah.
Everyone goes to Dunkin' Donuts for coffee in the morning on their way to work. So there's traffic backed up all the way on the street because there's not enough room in Dunkin' Donuts itself. It's kind of sad that that's what causes like this only traffic jam in Williamsport.
Well, they just bought the parking lot that the Harley dealership owned, so they're rerouting the whole Dunkin' Donuts through the light right there.
Oh,
on the way
nice.
back.
There's some other examples of externality. So a vintage car. You see someone driving like a really cool old car from like, I don't know, like the 50s or 60s, something you don't normally see. You get a little bit of enjoyment from that. So that's an example of a positive externality. Education. If you get a college degree, obviously you're going to earn more relative to just earning a high school degree. You'll get a better job. Like you get these benefits from it. The society benefits from having more people with a high level of education. And free software is another example of positive externality. I know John Turrell, he was a Nobel laureate from 2014, on Nobel Prize in Economics. I went to a week-long conference thing for grad students in Italy a couple summers ago. And at the end of the conference, like we got a picture with him as he like handed us like a certificate. But with mine, he literally just had his middle finger inside like this, sticking out. So the picture looks like he's flipping me off. So I can now say I was flipped off by Nobel laureate.
I think that's better than actual small picture.
Oh yeah. I was so excited. I had to like hang it up in my office, a little small picture. Then flip me the bird. So externalities, like I said, interfere with the efficiency of the market. Competitive markets, when there's no externalities going on, maximize economic surplus. So again, consumers as well as possible, producers as well off as possible. But when there's externalities present, this is going to cause the private and the social costs to differ, or the private and the social benefits to differ. So these consumers and producers aren't taking this into account when they're deciding what level of production to do, or what level of like purchasing goods to do. So your private costs. These are costs borne by a party in a transaction. So when you go to a pizza shop in town, the private cost is what you're paying. The social cost is the cost borne by all of society. So it's parties to the transaction, and then those not involved in the transaction. So because the private and the social costs differ, the parties don't take into account the total social cost. And that's what brings us away from this equilibrium that maximizes economic surplus. In fact, individuals are acting in their own self-interest. They're trying to maximize their marginal cost relative to the marginal benefit. But because their costs differ from, and the benefits differ from the rest of society, it ends up not making society as well off as possible. So the whole last chapter, how we talked about how great the market was, in this case it breaks down. All right, so let's look at electricity production. So electricity production, obviously, it's a very important industry for the modern economy. We couldn't be doing half what we're doing in this classroom right now without electricity. You know, the laptops, the projector, just like the lights, so you can see to take notes. When we think about the market for electricity, we have sellers. These are the actual producers that they generate the electricity. They sell it on the market. They're going to face increasing marginal costs to produce electricity. Remember this, so the upward sloping supply curve. And then you have buyers, and all of us that use electricity. And they face decreasing marginal benefits of additional electricity. So a downward sloping demand curve. The more electricity you consume, the less and less benefit you're getting for each unit. So the actions of these two groups are going to generate the market supply and demand curves for electricity. Now, when firms go and actually produce the electricity, they bear certain costs of production. So, the building themselves, the equipment that they're going to use to generate the electricity, the fuel that they're actually using to burn to create the electricity, labor, all these other things, they're going to directly bear those costs. So these are the private costs. And they're going to make those decisions based on the private costs solely. But remember, because pollution has a social cost, has this externality, the social cost is going to be higher. So the total cost of society of producing a good or service includes both the private cost and the external cost. So while the firm is only looking at their private costs, so the buildings, equipment, fuel, labor, all that stuff, all the things they see on their balance sheet, there's also this pollution, this additional cost, this externality that they're not taking into account. So here we have a market for electricity. So we have the demand curve right here. The consumers are willing and able to purchase. Then we have the supply curve S1 here. This is the marginal private cost. So that's the cost curve that the producer of electricity themselves, that's what they're facing. And all the things, the fuel they burn, the equipment, the factories, the labor, all that stuff. S2, this curve up here, is the marginal social cost. So that includes, we tell this textbook older because they say acid rain, but the cost of pollution, the cost of climate change. So again, that's going to be higher than the S1, the marginal private cost, because there's this additional cost that the private cost is missing out on. The efficient equilibrium is going to be the marginal social cost and the demand curve. Because in this case, the demand curve, there's no positive externality. So the private demand curve is equal to like the social demand curve. So where this crosses the marginal social cost, so that S2, that's going to be the efficient equilibrium. So we'll get this price of P efficient, the quantity bought and sold in the market at Q efficient. Now, the market equilibrium results from the decisions of producers themselves, not from everyone in society. So they're only going to take into account their private costs. So they're going to produce right here, where their marginal private cost, that supply curve, crosses the demand curve. So your market equilibrium is going to be right here. We end up with a lower price and a greater quantity produced on the market. So it's as if the price is too low, given what the efficient outcome is, and the quantity produced is too high. That's because society has the additional cost and the producers aren't taking into effect. And we end up with this deadweight loss. So this yellow triangle right here of basically these extra transactions, these extra electricity that's being produced and sold, greater than what is efficient. So because we're producing too much, we're causing these additional costs to society, we end up producing too much without taking into account the external. The good thing to remember, when there's a negative externality and producing or consuming a good or service, too much of the good or service is going to be produced at the market equilibrium. So the market's going to end up with overproduction, going to end up with too much costs on society. So now pollution is an example of a negative externality, one of the most common examples of negative externalities. Negative externalities can also result from consumption, not just from the production process. Pollution typically from the production process. So an example of negative externalities from consumption is cigarette smoke. Externalities might also be positive when the private benefit, so the benefit received by the consumer for a good or service, is less than the social benefit, so benefit to all society. That's going to include, like I mentioned, college education. So let's look at how positive externality works. So because college education is positive externality, people with a college degree having more than the society tends to make society better off, and those people, those college degrees earners, don't capture all the benefits of their college degree. So the marginal social benefit is out here at D2, whereas the marginal private benefit is at D1. Because there's gains to living in society with more educated people, they're better voters, tend to have lower crime, things like that. All marginal private benefits here, that benefit they don't capture pushes the demand curve up to here. So the marginal social benefit greater than the marginal private benefit. The efficient equilibrium, the efficient level of production, is going to be right here. The supply curve crosses the marginal social benefit. But however, on the market, because people going to college don't capture the full benefit of their degree, they're going to purchase a college education, decide to go to college, on their marginal private benefit curve. So right here. So we're going to end up with too low of a price on the market and too few college degrees. The quantity of college degrees in a society is going to be lower because they're not capturing that full benefit of their own college degree. And again, this is going to result in a deadweight loss. So the difference between the quantity of efficient college educations and the quantity of the market college education is going to lead to that deadweight loss. So the difference between those two. Right here. That's going to be shown by this yellow triangle there. So again, whether it's a positive externality or a negative externality, we're going to end up with deadweight loss, of society not being in as good of a place as it could be. And when there's a positive externality, too little of a good or service is going to be produced at equilibrium. So we need some way to move that the marginal private benefit curve up to the marginal social benefit curve. We can figure out some way to do that. Then market forces will take care of us, move us towards equilibrium, and maximize producer and consumer surplus. So if there are negative or positive externalities, the market equilibrium will not result in efficient quantity being produced. So we end up with overproduction when there's negative externalities, and underproduction when there's positive externalities. Again, no matter what, which way this is, there's going to be a deadweight loss. And how much deadweight loss we have depends on how large the externalities are. If there's a very large externality, whether it's positive or negative, we're going to see a large deadweight loss. And if there's just a small externality, we'll see a small deadweight loss. So when there's this deadweight loss, when the society is not in the optimal level of production, when the markets don't lead to these efficient outcomes that we've been talking about, it's called a market failure. The market fails to produce the efficient level of outcome. The larger the externality, the greater the size of the deadweight loss, the greater extent of market failure. Wouldn't it be great if we could just make those people pay for the pollution they caused? You think of the negative externality, wouldn't this be the best way to solve it? So externalities arise because of incomplete property rights. So because there are property rights out there that are unenforceable or they don't exist, no one can possibly own it, we end up with externalities. So property rights are the rights of individuals or businesses to have exclusive use of their property. This includes the right to buy or sell it, to exclude other people from using it. And this could be for physical or intangible objects. So when we think of property, we typically think of physical property. You think of like your laptop, your car, your clothes, things like that. But also can be intangible objects. It can be ideas that you have. You like work for a firm and you create intellectual property. So you write your own movie, you create a new character and trademark it, what have you. Right. Externalities can take many forms, not just like electricity like we think of. We made a whole movie based off of externalities.
Who are the people in your neighborhood?
Hi, it's a fabulous neighborhood.
In your neighborhood.
Look, new neighbors.
Oh, is that a fraternity?
I think they'll like us.
We're hip, we're cool.
Winka, what's up? Hey, homies.
Well, take it sleazy.
Yes.
What do you got there, sweetie? Is that a balloon?
That's not a balloon. Oh, Jesus. Oh, are you ready for a show? It's an expensive bush.
I'm sorry, I felt inspiration.
I'm about to rip it out of the ground.
Use the hips. It'll come easier.
Come on!
There it is.
Just stop doing this stupid stuff!
Why are you dressing up like Robert De Niro?
Are you talking to me?
I get what you're doing.
I'm watching you. I'm watching you, fucker.
Come get some. Oh!
Sorry, my ball just got in your face.
I'm pissed off. They underestimated us. I don't want to take the gloves off, but I'm going to take them off.
You have no idea what you started. Welcome to the darkness, bitches.
A frat broke into the car and stole all the airbags.
So weird.
Why would they just break in and steal the
I
airbags?
don't
It
know if
doesn't...
you follow me. Delta Psi has the upper hand.
The whole conflict in this movie is being caused by externalities created by the fraternity moving in next door. So what are they doing? They're having these late night parties. They're making it very difficult for the neighbors to live. There's a lot of noise, very loud all the time, a lot of trash, a lot of cars parked up in the neighborhood. These things that bother their neighbors. So these property rights we have, they're secure for the frat house. They're secure in like all their things. They're able to exclude their neighbors from their house, and vice versa. The neighbors pretty secure in their property rights of like their physical, tangible objects, a house, a yard, etc. But there's no property rights over the noise. In this situation, there's no property rights over who has the right to make noise or who has the right to enjoy quiet. And it's very difficult to enforce this because there's no private property rights. So because there's incomplete private property rights in this case, we end up with this conflict and these externalities that exist. We can't just hold one party accountable. And I think we try to think about it, it's very difficult to try to imagine how you would have property rights for the noise. So we're now in the second section of looking at private solutions to externalities. So Nobel laureate Rob Coase, he argued that private parties could solve the externality problem through private bargaining. So they can get together and one party could agree to pay the other for the imposition they're causing. Whether it's the frat guys making a lot of noise, paying the neighbors to like make them better off, or whether it's the neighbors paying the frat to like be quiet. And he said that this is possible provided that private property rights are assigned and enforceable and the transaction costs are low. And this idea is going to be known as the Coase theorem, that people can bargain with each other to reduce these externalities, make themselves better off. Now something we have to talk about is the idea of transaction cost. So these are costs in time and other resources that both parties to a transaction incur as they go through the process of trying to reach an agreement and to carry out this exchange, the actual purchase of goods and services. And according to Coast, it doesn't matter who has property rights initially. Both sides will end up reaching the ultimate agreement, the optimal best agreement, if they're able to get together and negotiate. So the example he used is a farmer and a paper mill, both sharing a stream. So if no one owns a stream, if the stream's just like unowned by either party, the paper mill will discharge our waste into the stream. But if they do this, then the farmer can't use it. Right? It's full of pollution, not going to be able to use it to water his crops. It's going to kill the crops. So let's say there are property rights. If the farmer owns a stream, he can prevent the mill from discharging into the stream. So this is my stream, you're not allowed to put that in there. And if they do pollute it, he can call the legal authorities, take them to court, all these different things to prevent them. Or you can allow the mill to discharge into the stream for a fee. So you say, okay, you can put a certain amount of pollution into there, enough that I can still use the stream to water my crops. But you have to pay me a certain amount of money. Because the water's, it's not going to be great. Maybe the crops aren't going to grow as large. So it gets paid that money to account for the worst crops you've grown. Either way, whether the farmer says, no, you can't discharge, or yes, you can discharge, but you have to pay me, good property rights avoid this market failure. And you can see it from the other side. If the mill owned the stream, they can decide to pollute in there, or they could charge the farmer a fee to reduce their pollution in there. So Coase's most important observation from this, and the one people talk about the most, is that it didn't matter who the property rights were assigned to initially. That if they were assigned to either party, through these negotiations, they could reach a good outcome. So when we're talking about the paper mill and the farmer had enforceable property rights over the stream, the externality problem could be resolved. But the paper mill owns the stream, the same exact thing. Again, because they're able to bargain with each other, they can reach the optimal outcome. Now, obviously, everything in theory sounds a lot better than when we practice it in the real world. And there's assumptions with the Coase theory, like there's assumptions with any other model we talked about. There's two main assumptions. The first is that transaction costs are low. However, transaction costs exist in the real world. It's often difficult and time-consuming to reach an agreement. Two parties have to be willing to work with each other. If neither party is willing to give an inch, then there's no agreement you're going to reach. You're just going to waste your time. And if there's many parties involved, you end up with really high transaction costs. So when we deal with pollution, it's not just one or a small group of people dealing with, the air pollution from electricity production. Large groups of people, millions of people have to deal with it for local production. It's very difficult, very time-consuming, very expensive to get all these people together to get them to negotiate, a cost being paid by the electricity producer. The second is property rights aren't always clear. So who owns the air? There's often no clear property rights for water. If someone damages your property, you have legal recourse. You can take them to court. You can call the police on them and force them to stop. When there's no clear property rights, if no one owns it, or very weak enforcement mechanisms, then you can't do that. So this breaks down. If people own the air around us, we could charge for pollution, or we could file a cease and desist order a lot more easily. But right now, when there's no clear property rights to the air, it's difficult or impossible to do that. So let's go back to the frat house and the neighbor conflict. Why might these two assumptions not hold in this case? They want different things, so meeting in the middle might be very difficult.
Yeah.
Parents are going to want to party every night. The family's going to want to be quiet pretty much every night. That's good. Anyone in here in a fraternity or sorority? All right. So you know from like meetings and stuff, it's like herding cats.
Yeah.
Trying to get all the brothers or the sisters all together. So high transaction costs and negotiating with the family next door, trying to get all the brothers to agree on something.
Yes.
What's that? And there's difficulty of like the property rights, actually who owns the quiet or the lack of noise. So who's starting out, with the initial property right? If it's unclear, it makes negotiations more difficult. I think those were the three I had. So the key insights from Coase theorem. When there's no transaction cost, the initial property rights don't matter. Now this is very rare. This is like the farmer and the mill owner on the same stream. These sometimes do exist. So when they exist, initial property rights do not matter. It's great. These negotiations sort everything out and do so very easily. However, typically there are transaction costs. And he goes on later in the paper to focus on transaction costs. For most people, they read the first couple pages, it talks about no transaction costs, they put the paper down, and that's it. When there are transaction costs, the initial assignment of property rights do matter. Because it's costly to bargain, whoever gets the property rights first tend to keep it. So it's important to make sure property rights are given to the better party. So to choose which is better for society, whether we want people to have clean air to breathe, or whether we want a lot of electricity production. And something else to take away from this is that both markets and government face transaction costs. So whether it's government trying to, establish who gets the property rights, we'll look at in the next section the solutions the government can use. There's transaction costs involved with that. There's also transaction costs in this private action. People on the market trying to reach this good outcome, trying to reach an agreement. So what we have to do is compare the cost of both government action and market action and select the one with lower transaction costs. Sometimes it's going to be government action. Sometimes it's going to be private action. What we have to do is think through which one is going to have lower transaction costs, which one will be easier to reach a good outcome. And you don't simply just tax the creator of an externality. Sometimes you're going to want to place that tax, to place the effort on the other party that's to deal with the externality. Depending on what the externality is, how many parties there are on each side, and what the transaction costs of negotiating are. Okay, so let's look at the real world. Who's ever flown on a plane that had to deal with too small legroom? When I first started here, like a month or two in, we started a project for the state of North Dakota, so we had to fly to North Dakota to Bismarck. So you take like a normal plane with decent legroom to Chicago, and then from Chicago to Bismarck, we take one that's like 3/4 of the size of a Greyhound bus. And there is literally no legroom. You're sitting there with like your knees up in your chest. Like no one ever takes these planes. So does the person sitting in front of you have the right to recline their seat? On the way to North Dakota, they had no ability to. The thing was so freaking small. But normally, planes, they can recline, but your knees are going to be right in their back. So there's no law about this, no rule about this, but the answer seems to be yes. So the person in front of you can recline their seat. So there was a New York Times columnist who suggested to use the Coase theorem in these situations. Pay the person in front of you to not recline their seat if it's taking up too much of your legroom. So what do you guys think? Do you think transaction costs here are small enough for the Coase theorem to work? Have you ever tried to pay someone to not recline their seat? Or just ask them to not reply to your receipt? I guess you ask them, they say no, and you're like, okay, I'm willing to pay you, right? So while transaction costs should be low, people feel weird offering to pay people in these situations. So normally these aren't going to take place. It's just because people's aversion to making things transactions. There's a tweet from like a year or two ago. Cam Newton offered to trade seats with someone and pay him $1,500. The guy, for some reason, turned it down. Would you take $1,500 to switch seats with him?
Yes.
I'm assuming the tickets are what, like maybe $500 round trip, 600. Unless the guy bought them like last second. You're like literally like making money to go on a vacation.
Buy another seat.
You can pay the person next to you to like move away somewhere else and get 2 seats.
Buy the seat in front of you. It's where you feel better.
So this is a real life situation where not quite coaxing bargaining. So they're talking about trading seats, but still where this transaction didn't take place. All right, we got like 10 minutes left. Okay, well, we've been talking about education. Are you guys, this is all pretty much business majors in here, right? Okay. So what do you guys think is the value of education? Where does the value come from? There's a few different theories. Some say it's the skills you learn. You actually like build human capital. You build a lot of knowledge and you go out and now, you know, so much more than before, you know all this stuff, you can just begin working. Other people say that's a joke. And they say it's all about signaling. Now you go to school, you show that you can sit down and learn this stuff, that you're open to new experiences, that you can live on your own, and that you're responsible enough to like, you know, turn in your stuff on time. And then once you get a job, they teach you all the things you need to do. And some people say it's the connections you make. It's like the whole reason people get their MBA at like Ivy League schools is just to make connections with other Ivy League MBAs. And then that's how they get hired. So what do you guys think? What do you think is the value of education? What are you saying?
Like I said, I'm just there for soccer.
I'm in for it, football.
I feel like the connections you make, I feel like it could be a mixture of all three. And then obviously, when you get a degree, that obviously requires some dedication and perseverance and whatnot, everything that like a job would want in a person. But also, you can get a job in a competitive field, you're going to need to know people. So like networking throughout the university could help you with that. And yeah.
Yeah, schools don't really brag about the signaling aspect. Maybe some of like the top like Ivy League schools do.
Yeah.
But they always brag about their networking and then the skills they're going to teach you. There's one professor, George Mason, who says it's like almost all signaling. And it's just saying that, yeah, like I'm conscientious, I'll show up and like do my work. Just show me what you need. Anyone else with a strong opinion?
Definitely feel like it's a mix between the networking and then also what you learn. It's like if you learn a lot, then clearly it shows that you're able to learn more and you can know more than a lot of the candidates. But at the same time, like say you go to Penn State, everyone's like, oh, you'll easily get a job because they see you go to Penn State. Or like I found out a lot of people know about here and they know how good their education is. They're like, oh, you'll easily get a job because it's St. Francis.
Oh yeah, I feel like pretty much anywhere if you get a healthcare degree, like there's healthcare people around here who went to St. Francis. The first thing they do is look for St. Francis grads. else got opinion? All right, we'll need a few more people to talk before we get out of here. I don't want to start this next section and get like a quarter of the way through it and then have to pick up next time. Then, you just have to review what we talked about anyway. We don't get anywhere. I think it depends a lot by what field you go into.
Yeah.
So if you're like something like healthcare, you're like hard science, like you need to build a lot of skills when you're an undergrad and like learn a lot of stuff. You can't just go in blind. But at the same time, there are a lot of other fields where you don't use that much stuff you learned in undergrad. Even like for like grad school, for like a lot of like specialties, like for econ, you don't even have to major in econ to get like a PhD in it. You're supposed to have like, I think 4 undergrad classes in it. Most people that get a PhD are like mathematics majors or like engineering majors. Timmons was actuarial science. So they don't even care when you go into grad school. They like have a couple of basics and that's it. And do math.
Is grad school necessary?
For certain fields.
It used to be that college is necessary, and I feel like now college is the standard.
Yeah, it used to be a high school degree, that's all you needed, and you can go and get a good job. And you went to college if you were rich and could afford the time off, or if you wanted to do something super advanced.
Yeah.
Now it's like, yeah, college and then grad school.
And more and more
Which sucks that you're spending more time
for the same.
for like the same type of job. With all this extra time, all this extra money.
Is it worth it? That's the question.
So for each individual person, it's rational to like do that. You're like, oh, I'll do better if I get this more advanced degree. But overall, we're just spending more time and money and not getting any better off like in society. If you don't believe these advanced degrees are helping that much.
I mean, if you put in 6 years of work compared to like 6 years of extra school, I think that experience and actual like your field is more valuable than I guess college, grad school.
Yeah, I think in a lot of cases it is. You see people writing things like the case against education. Like people are spending too much time, too much money on education. Like there's an optimal level, and we've exceeded that optimal amount.
Do you think that colleges will start like regressing with college students, especially with this?
Well, it's definitely going to regress between the coronavirus, like in the short term, and in the long run, just the size of the age cohorts. Those 27, 28-year-olds are the largest single age like population in the U.S., and then the other ages like go down. It was like the last of like the baby boomers kids, like 27, 28. So it's like a smaller pool to like choose from.
It also just costs a ridiculous amount of money.
Yeah.
Like, almost like an unethical amount. Because like a lot of people say that like a lot of problems in the world could be like solved with like higher education and just like education in general. Then like the price tag on it is like $300K for years. I mean in Canada like education is like full secondary is free for like under certain circumstances. Like if you're I think it's if your family is under like $100K combined both parents, then you can go to school for free. Which is like cool. And it doesn't discourage people from going. So like in America, you probably need like a $300K loan to go to school before, and then you're just working for the first like 8 years paid off.
Yeah, you spend so much money
It's kind of just working backwards.
on all these different things that don't directly apply to education. So we're hiring all these administrators, all these extras, so like students have more fun.
Yeah.
Hard to look around at like St. Francis and see that, but like a lot of larger universities, like LSU puts in like the water park.
The water park?
Don't they have a lazy river?
Yeah.
It's in one of the SEC schools has a lazy river. Clemson just built like a $6 million, I forget what sport. I mean, it was either soccer or baseball, built like a brand new like complex for them, like just this year.
Yeah.
I mean, besides that, we give these like federal grants to students to like try to offset the cost. But Federal Reserve looked at what the impact of that was, and for every like dollar they gave in like grants to students, the price of college tuition increased by 8 cents. So by pumping more money into it, we end up increasing the cost.